Welcome to the Capital News. I'm your host, Alex Karitis. Today is Wednesday, June 17th, 2020. Thank you so much for joining me. Title of today's podcast is Society in Collapse. This is pretty much in conjunction with a previous podcast we did a couple weeks ago, Rome is Burning. And of course, that was about the protests turning into riots in this country. But really, it was a whole host of issues that have been lingering just beneath the surface in this country for a very long time. I really didn't have any type of theme for today's podcast. I don't know where this one's going to go. I don't have that many talking points. So much in the news. On the geopolitical front, economic front, these protests, these riots, one thing after the next. Everything just sort of seems to be coming to a head. And that's not a surprise. At least it shouldn't be to this audience, because we've been discussing these very many issues since this podcast has been online, since last February. But if you look to the recent news, especially now down in Atlanta, with the death of Rayshard Brooks, who was shot by a police officer in that Wendy's drive-thru, the subsequent protests, the riots, because that very Wendy's was burned down, because, Wendy's was responsible for this. I mean, this is just getting completely out of hand. Now, one of those police officers has already been fired and has been charged with murder. The other police officer was also charged with other counts, but I do believe he is on administrative leave. You now have, this very evening, police officers in Atlanta calling in sick as a matter of protest to these charges against these officers. You want to talk about defunding the police? The police might not even want to be the police anymore in this country, in some of our major cities, because of what is going on. Can't walk across the street. These police officers, the vast majority of them are good, outstanding men and women. They put their lives on the line every day. They have these situations, especially when things get really heated, and we witnessed this, where police officers were ambushed, sitting in their patrol cars, being assassinated. That's a reality. That happened. It can happen again. But these police officers are calling in sick. Of course, they're not sick. They are protesting these charges against these officers. And this evening, the mayor of Atlanta was on CNN. I happened to catch it. And she says, well, at least this evening, we are okay. We have enough police officers coming out onto the beat to handle this evening. Tomorrow is going to be another day. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. This is serious stuff. You want to risk your life in a serious job, going into situations that most people do not want to deal with, and now you have every single move scrutinized, every single word scrutinized, being heard on camera. Oh, well, he said something and that wasn't very professional. He didn't say it the way I wanted him to say it. He didn't act in the best manner possible. So fire him. Just because. Let an investigation ensue, no matter what the situation might be. Allow for due process. Allow for a proper investigation to be conducted. Don't jump to conclusions. Don't charge people. I guess this one officer, he's charged with murder. He can face the death penalty. Now, most people have probably seen at least some clips of the video here. Rayshard Brooks resisted arrest, fought these officers. Also on CNN, you had a couple of the attorneys for one of the officers. I can't recall his name off the top of my head right now, but the one who did not shoot Mr. Brooks. In the altercation, while Mr. Brooks was resisting arrest, when he flipped this officer over, according to his attorneys, the police officer's attorneys, he suffered a concussion in this scuffle. And according to his attorneys, he didn't even know who did the firing, who was doing the shooting. Saying, well, he was concussed. He didn't have his bearings. Didn't really know what was going on. That's why when he went over to Mr. Brooks and stood over him, he stepped on his arm, stood on his arm. Because he didn't want him to get a weapon, because he didn't know what was going on. Now that's what they're saying. But that's what I'm saying. Allow for a proper investigation to unfold. Before you jump to all these conclusions, before you charge officers, or anybody else for that matter, just because you want to keep the heat off, because people are upset, because they might protest and because they might riot. That's not what this country was founded on. It was not founded on mob rule. That's not how it works here. This is not a democracy. This is a constitutional republic by design. A republic if you can keep it. Not a democracy, because democracy at the end becomes mob rule. Because it's just majority rule. 51% telling 49% what to do. That's a recipe for disaster. That's why you have representative government. That's why you have the rule of law. That's why you have due process. Now, I'm not saying what this police officer did in shooting and killing Mr. Brooks was right. But what Mr. Brooks did was also wrong. He resisted arrest. He grabbed the taser from one of the officers. While he was on foot running away from the police officers, he turned and aimed the taser at the officer. The officer pulls his firearm and shoots Mr. Brooks in the back as he's turning. And kills him. This is a tragedy. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. All because Mr. Brooks was asleep in his car in a drive-thru, and the police officers early on were very civil. Are you okay? They don't know who the guy is. They don't know what's going on. You have a heart attack, a stroke? Is he a diabetic? Drug overdose? Is he drunk? What's going on? Do you need to get to a hospital? Having a conversation, okay, I'm going to put you under arrest, whatever. You investigate it, you see what happened. Then you resist arrest, and this comes to this tragic conclusion. I don't know where this is going, but I think it's going to get worse, much, much worse before it gets better. Not just here in this country, but globally. Because of the global protests that we saw before COVID-19, we're going to see them again if we aren't already seeing them, and in some countries we already are. I told you these protests would be coming to a theater near you. Here they are. I thought it would be more because of a economic, because of anything, and it is. It is now. the death, the killing, the murder of George Floyd. Which justification for these protests? Not the riots, but the protests. This is a society in collapse. Police don't want to be police anymore. They're resigning, they're quitting, they're calling in sick. How much longer is this going to last? What's the rule of law? Will police officers, even if they don't call in sick, even if they are on the beat, and they say, okay, well, we got a call from dispatch, you got to go into this certain area of the town, and they say, well, yeah, we know what part of town that is. They don't like us too much, so screw them. What happens if that happens? And they don't go, because they don't want to. What kind of society is this going to turn into? They don't like us over there. They're protesting. We hear what they say. They don't like us. They're screaming in our face. We're not going. That's a possibility. I don't know what the answer is to all of these issues. This podcast is mainly about the economic issues. Yes, we talk about politics, especially when there's something historic, like the impeachment. It's an election year, so we talk about the elections. We talk about the debates when they had them. And we tried to keep most of the focus on the economics. That's my wheelhouse. That's what I know best. Of course, we talk about, like I said, the politics, the geopolitics, how it all interconnects. But I just had to bring this up, this social decay that we have been experiencing in this country for years. And it's just all coming to a head. I don't think either of the presidential candidates, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, I don't think either one of these men are the men or the man of the hour for what this country is going through. Neither one of them. Donald Trump doesn't have the leadership qualities and characteristics that are needed for this. And Joe Biden has been a part of the problem for 30, 40 years. Neither one of them are equipped for this. Which is another sign and symptom of a society in collapse. I had a recent conversation with a family member about the politics in this country. And I was asked, well, who in the Republican Party perhaps could you support? Or would you say could be president if it wasn't Trump, if this was just complete, okay, it's got to be somebody new from both parties, at least looking at the Republican side, who would you say seems to be the man or woman of the hour? I couldn't come up with a name. And I still can't. How pathetic is this? Nobody. Even some of the libertarian-minded Republicans. Somebody like a Rand Paul or a Ted Cruz or a Mike Lee. Where are they? Where are they? Where's the outrage? Where's the filibustering? Where's the condemnation of all of this money printing? No transparency. No accountability. Who cares? Like we said yesterday. Yesterday's podcast entitled Doing It Anyway. Yeah, you have this emergency policy, this emergency facility there, Mr. Chairman, of purchasing corporate debt. But doesn't mean you have to do it. Especially when you say you're only going to use it in an emergency, but you also say that the markets are functioning properly. So then why are you doing it? Well, because we can. Can't we? Who's going to overrule us? Nobody. You can question us all you want. You can bring us up to Capitol Hill all you want, or on a Skype or Zoom conference call. All you want. We'll be glad to show up. Answer your question, not answer it, because you're not going to do a damn thing about it. We want to print trillions of dollars and give it to our buddies. That's exactly what we're going to do. And they're doing it. Where's Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, Mike Lee? Where are they? Where's anybody? Print more trillions of dollars. Got to print them because we don't have them. There's no tax base. It's gone. Consumers, individuals are broke. Families are broke. Corporations are broke. 20% of companies are zombie companies, like we discussed yesterday. Means they're broke. 20%. It's not a small number. And it's only going to get worse. And nobody says a thing, nobody cares. Just give them more, just print more money, just borrow, spend, do what you got to do. We don't care. And all these politicians kiss Jay Powell's ass because they give them the perfect cover. The Fed gives these politicians the perfect cover. No responsibility, no truth-telling. You don't have to go back home to your constituents and tell them we messed up, live beyond our means, got to raise taxes, got to cut spending, got to do a combination of things to get our fiscal house in order. Nope, don't worry. We're just going to print more money. And it's a free lunch. It's free. There's no costs. There's no limitations. A $4.5 trillion balance sheet of the Federal Reserve. That was a concern, but now it's $7 trillion. Don't have to worry about it. Figure that one out. Several months ago, Congress, this is Jay Powell, Congress, you got to concern yourselves with the national debt and the deficits. Now, trillions of dollars more added to both. You don't got to worry about them. Now's not the time to concern yourself with these minor details of $26 trillion at a national debt and $4 trillion at a deficit level. Don't got to worry about them now. We'll deal with this on the other side of this fiasco. That's another sign and symptom of a society in collapse. Another sign and symptom that this is a banana republic. I don't know what you need to see. This is not draining of the swamp. This is the swamp. And everybody going to get in their silos because that's what people do in this country. And it's 2020. It's a presidential election. Those damn Democrats, those damn Republicans. That's it. And you're going to get the same nonsense again. Nobody's going to change a damn thing. They're only putting the pedal to the metal, making all of this worse. Don't tell me it's just the Republicans or it's just the Democrats. That vote in our podcast, 96-0. No votes to America. No votes for America. 96-0. That means it was both Republicans and Democrats voting for these monstrosities of policies. Trillions of dollars we don't have to fill a hole and then to somehow call it stimulus. Let's create a $1 trillion hole, multi-trillion dollar hole, and then let's just print trillions of dollars and call it even. And actually say it's even better. It's all stimulus, V-shaped recovery. Everything's going to be better on the other side. Well, it isn't. It's not going to be. Let's extend things. Need more unemployment insurance. Got to extend that stuff, even though everything's supposedly bouncing back. Nope, got to keep extending these things. You have your moratoriums on student loan payments, on rent, on mortgage payments. Oh, well, we're going to extend those too. I thought everything was coming back. I thought everything was great. So why do we need to extend unemployment insurance? Why do we need to extend these moratoriums, these forbearance measures? Everything's great. You know, you can get more truth out of a stand-up comedian than you can a politician or a central banker. That's a society in collapse. And comedians are always truth tellers, but of course they use exaggeration. That's what makes it funny. But now the exaggerations are greater coming from the politicians and the central bankers and other policymakers. This is a joke. This is a joke. You have COVID-19 cases on the rise in about half of the country. This is no surprise. This is what was predicted. This was what was discussed. You're going to have, and then I'm not calling this the second wave. This is still the first wave of this. Most of the cases when they started were going to be on the coast. That makes logical sense. That's where most of international flights are going to come from. Those are your big population centers, your densest cities. Tourist attractions. Slowly but surely, it's going to make its way to middle America, if you will. And that's exactly what's taking place. And now this weekend, you're going to have Trump's rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And you have many officials within Tulsa saying, don't come, basically, don't do it, because they have a spike of COVID-19 cases there, too. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because you're going to have an arena of about 20,000 people for this rally in the arena itself, and then supposedly there's going to be about 10,000, tens of thousands, maybe up to 100,000 more people in the surrounding area for other political events surrounding this Trump rally. Now, you do what you want. I'm a libertarian. You live your life. You make your choices. But you don't have the right to do harm to others or to put others in harm's way. It's that fine line you do have to walk when it comes to that. And personally, with these rallies, I don't get what the big deal is, what the hype is, I mean, it's just, that's just me. Maybe that's people's entertainment. Maybe they really derive pleasure and joy out of going to these things. I think they're ridiculous for the most part. I really do. I get it's part of the process. It's part of the specter. It's part of the tradition. I get that. I respect that. You do what you want. Makes you happy. Go ahead. But it's not like you're really learning anything from going to them. It's not as if President Trump is the most articulate and eloquent politician that we've ever had who is just going to wax philosophical all of our policy errors and flaws, and that he now has the remedies, and he's just going to paint a beautiful picture of how all of these things are going to be solved. He's not going to do it. It's not who he is. He's not John Adams. He's not Thomas Jefferson, George Washington. It's just not who he is. So it's just the specter of it all. His flamboyance, charisma, whatever it is. Okay, knock yourself out. It'll be interesting to see what happens in Tulsa and some of the surrounding areas in a few weeks. And I hope nobody gets sick. But hope's not a strategy. And I imagine the numbers will skyrocket. The interesting thing will be, how does it get played? Of course, the left will blame Trump for everything because that's what they do. You had to have your damn rally. Now all these people got sick. You crazy? What are you doing? What a mess. It's just all a mess. You got John Bolton, former national security advisor. His book is coming out, or at least it's supposed to be, but you have the Trump administration suing him and the publisher because John Bolton might be trying to publish classified information, even though there's already a rigorous process beforehand before the book can be published, that it has to get checked and verified. And I don't like John Bolton. And those of you who have been with me know this. He's the scum of the earth as far as I'm concerned. Why he was even in this administration is beyond me. But he was there. And I give people credit where credit is due. The man has been in politics. He's been in Washington, D.C. for a long time. I've stated this here many times before. Because of that, he is a player. He knows how to maneuver. He knows, John Bolton knows how to cover his rear end. He knows what classified information is. He was the National Security Advisor. He was a former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. He knows what classified information is. He knows how to handle it, and he knows what's going to happen to him if he mishandles it. So the question becomes, is this true? The accusation from the White House that he is attempting to publish classified information, or is what John Bolton is going to be publishing the truth? And the president doesn't like the truth. He has a very casual relationship with it at best. Can't have the truth coming out in the middle of a presidential election about some things that aren't going to make the president look very good. We'll have to wait and see. I'm sure there's some truth in this book, how the president has conducted himself on a number of policies, a number of issues with a number of foreign leaders. And of course, the president is out there belittling John Bolton. He's washed up. He's a hack. You hired a man. Same thing he says about John Kelly, a 4-star United States Marine Corps general. Washed up hack. You hired him. Secretary of Homeland Security, then your Chief of Staff. James Mattis, Secretary of Defense, also a 4-star United States Marine Corps general. He's a hack. He's washed up. He doesn't know what he's doing. Rex Tillerson, former Secretary of State. Same thing. He's a hack. He's a joke. He's washed up. Former Attorney General Jeff Sessions, one of the first major politicians to support Donald Trump in his presidential election. Washed up. He's a hack. He's a joke. He's a loser. You're either with Trump 100% or you're dead to him. He hired all these people. Where's his responsibility in this then, as judge of character or competence? They all fooled him, I guess. They all tricked him. He has no responsibility for these people whatsoever. He has no responsibility for his actions. It's always somebody else's fault. That's why the man's not fit for this office. He's not fit for this hour, for this moment. None of us is perfect. None of us, from our natural instincts, our natural tendencies, what we think we ought to do in certain situations, is going to be right for every situation. You have to understand your limitations. You have to understand your weaknesses, your shortcomings, especially if you're the president of the United States, because of the amount of responsibility that you carry on your shoulders. And what that means is when you come to those situations where you have to face something that is your weakness, you're going to have to move outside of your comfort zone. You're going to have to move outside of what comes naturally to you in those certain circumstances. You have to rise above it. That's your job as a leader. And if you can't do it, then you either don't say anything about it, which makes you an ineffective and poor leader, or you resign. And at least you're honorable from that. And if you understand the history of this country, because there's a myth, too, in this country, politically speaking, that somehow the American people always pick the right person to be the president of the United States at that time. That's a bunch of BS. Bunch of baloney. If you truly understand your history, there are several presidents who never should have been president. Several presidents who should have resigned. Several other presidents who should have been impeached and removed. So that's a bunch of bunk that the American people always get it right. We don't. Clearly, we don't. $26 trillion in debt. a Federal Reserve that's out of control, a Congress that's out of control. That's us. That's we the people. We are the society in collapse. We are the social decay. We vote for these people. And then we defend them because it's who we voted for. Can't admit wrongdoing ourselves. Can't take responsibility ourselves. It's the Democrats' fault. It's the Republicans' fault. And back and forth we go. Until the inevitable collapse is upon us, and it's upon us. These are the first throes of the collapse. The greatest nations, the greatest empires, any historian will tell you, collapse from within. Because that's the truth. You can't get your act together. There's no leadership. It's demagoguery. It's playing to your political base. It's not having the ability to rise above the situation, to rise above the noise, and to unite the country. I do not lay all of this at the feet of the president. He's one man. He's been there for 3 years. All of these issues are not his fault. They're not. These are structural issues that have been lingering for generations. And it's that perpetual kicking the can down the road. But why I criticize this president, this administration, this Congress as harshly as I do is because they're continuing to do the same thing. There is no draining of the swamp. You know, it's good timing because one of my subscribers left a comment, and it's just ironic because I wanted to discuss this too. I had the same question. Where is Occupy Wall Street? Where are these rioters or protesters? Where are these people? If they thought 2008, 2009 was bad, my God. Maybe they're still in shock because now this is 2008, 09 on steroids with what they're doing and what they're getting away with. They're doing it anyway. Don't have to. Markets are functioning. NASDAQ's at all-time highs. What are you worried about? Why do we have to utilize an emergency facility? Because we can. Because you're not going to stop us. Because you all voted for it 96-0. That's why. Because the president signed it into law with a huge smile on his face. That's why. Because Mnuchin's not going to tell you where the money's going. That's why. But you're going to get out there this year and you're going to go vote because you think it makes a difference. What a joke. Society in collapse. This is just the beginning. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Koritis. Godspeed.